What is the best way to start your first garden? Let's talk about it. Every day I see people in gardening and homesteading groups asking what is the best way to start a garden and what are the best plants to grow if you've never grown a garden before. My first advice to any new gardener is to start simple and go slow. Do not plant all of the things in your first garden or you will overwhelm yourself and set yourself up for failure. Your first garden should be small. Maybe 2 to 4 containers or an area about 10 foot by 10 foot, but no bigger than that. Gardens can be a lot of work until you get your systems worked out. I tell new gardeners to plant in containers for their first year because they are less work than preparing a new in-ground area. Get some 5-gallon buckets or some 20-gallon tubs and place them in a sunny area of your yard. Make sure to drill some drainage holes and fill them with the best soil you can afford. Potting soil mixed with compost is good, but you may have to sift out the larger chunks of organic matter that hasn't quite broken down yet. Now that you have a place to plant, you need to decide what to plant. Make a list of your 5 favorite vegetables to eat. Never grow anything that you aren't absolutely in love with in your first garden. This year is about learning how to care for your plants, not experimentation. You can experiment later, but this year should be about learning. Many people like to grow tomatoes. They're easy to grow and they grow well in a container. If you love tomatoes, this might be a good choice for you. I'm told that there are actually people out there that don't love tomatoes. Can't imagine such a thing. How can you not love tomatoes? I'm a little bit suspicious of people who don't love tomatoes. Anyway, if you're one of those unhinged people that don't love tomatoes, don't grow tomatoes. Once you have a list of the 5 vegetables you do love to eat, it's time to start researching those plants. Questions you need to get the answers to include: how long between planting until harvest? How much space does this plant require? What varieties grow best in containers? How much food should I expect from each plant? And how much maintenance will this plant need? The first question, how long between planting until harvest, is very important because if you live in an area with a 90-day growing season and the plant you want to grow requires 120 days between planting until harvest, it's not going to have time to give you any food before the cold weather kills it. There are ways around this problem, but you must know if you even have time for the plant to produce food for you before you spend the time, effort, and money on trying to grow it. The best way to get around this issue is to purchase plant starts that are at least 30 days old before you put them into the ground. Planting started vegetables rather than seeds gives you a head start, helping to ensure that you will be eating those vegetables before the frost kills them. You can start your own plants 4 to 6 weeks before it's time to put them into the ground, but I would advise against it if you are a new gardener. Starting seeds indoors can be a bit tricky and possibly expensive, and we are trying to boost your confidence, not dash your gardening dreams. You want to make things as easy and inexpensive for your first year, so plan to purchase plants from your local nursery, or choose a crop that has a shorter growing season. Examples of vegetables that produce a crop quickly include lettuce, beets, and some varieties of beans. These are great choices to sow seeds directly into the ground without having started plants. Welcome to the old Mayfield place. I'm Snow the farmer's wife, and I teach you to be more self-sufficient in so many ways, such as growing your own food, using herbal medicine, and preserving food for long-term storage. The second question, how much space does this vegetable need, can eliminate many crops that simply will not grow well in containers. Most melons require many square feet to spread out before they will give you a watermelon or cantaloupe and are not suited for growing in a 5-gallon bucket. Corn requires at least a foot between plants and must have many plants around it to pollinate and produce 1 or 2 ears of corn per plant, so it isn't practical to grow in containers. On the other hand, you can grow a tomato plant or 2 pepper plants in a bucket, and each of these types of plants will give you multiple fruits over the summer. So if you love tomatoes or peppers, you should seriously consider these for your first garden. The answer to the third question, what varieties grow best in containers, may save you a lot of headache as your plants mature. Some varieties are more suited for containers than others. Tomatoes come in indeterminate, determinate, and dwarf varieties. Indeterminate plants keep growing taller through the season and can reach over 7 feet in height, requiring some sort of trellising to keep them from falling over and sprawling on the ground. Determinate tomatoes usually stop growing at about 4 to 6 feet tall and are easier to keep in a container. And the dwarf varieties stay very small, less than 2 feet tall, and may be ideal for you to grow on your apartment balcony. If you like green beans, you will probably want to choose a bush variety rather than a pole bean. Bush beans usually stay under 2 feet tall, and I've had pole beans get over 8 feet tall. They just keep growing until the frost kills them. Once you have a list of your 5 favorite vegetables that grow well in a container and you have time to grow them, now you need to determine whether they are worth growing by finding out how much food you can expect to get from each plant. While you could grow corn in containers if you had enough space for about 50 containers, you will only get 1 or 2 ears from each stalk. It's probably not worth investing your precious space for such little return. One watermelon plant will give you approximately 2 to 6 watermelons, but they require about 20 square feet of growing room, so that may not be a good choice either. On the other hand, you can plant 3 or 4 bush bean plants in a 20-gallon container and expect to harvest about 2 pounds of green beans over the season. There are varieties of cucumbers that stay relatively small and are great for growing in a large tub. If you plant 4 of these in one tub, you should expect 30 to 40 cucumbers for the season. And 3 potatoes planted in the same size container have the potential to give you 6 pounds of potatoes in the fall. The last thing you need to consider is how much maintenance will your chosen plant need. Tomatoes and peppers will need the occasional pruning to keep the plants healthy. You will need to harvest cucumbers routinely to ensure that none of them go to seed, because if even 1 cucumber begins to ripen, the plant is done and won't produce any more fruit. Potatoes are pretty much a set it and forget it vegetable, but you will still need to inspect the plant for pests to keep them from destroying your crop. You will need to maintain adequate water in the soil. Because they are in containers, they can't put down deep roots to go find water when there is a long period between rains. To help reduce the amount of evaporation of water from your containers, you will need to mulch your plants. This will also help keep down the weeds that can compete against your vegetables for both water and nutrients. The earth does not like to be uncovered, and if you don't cover the earth, it will cover itself. To ensure that your vegetables have all the nutrients they need to give you the most food, they will have to be fertilized every 2 to 4 weeks because, like water, plants grown in containers can't put down deep roots to find the minerals they need. Now that you have your list of your 5 favorite vegetables, I would suggest you narrow it down to the top 2 or 3 that are the easiest and most prolific to grow. This will give you the best chance of a successful harvest, and success will make you confident in expanding your garden next year. Thank you for stopping by the Old Mayfield Place today. Stay prepared, get started on your plant research, and have a blessed week.